Hello and welcome to this edition of World at War. My name is Mohammed Saleh. Bangladesh, the South Asian nation of 170 million people, was gripped by violence this past week as relentless clashes erupted between the student protesters, security officials and pro-government student activists over job quota system. More than 100 people have been killed during the week's unrest, although the exact death toll is difficult to assess, partly due to the communications shutdown. Thursday was in fact the deadliest day of the protests, which saw the government buildings being torched down and the imposition of a nationwide internet blackout. Clashes were reported in over 47 of Bangladesh's 64 districts. The next day, the police in Bangladesh's capital banned all public rallies. But that failed to deter the protesting students who took to the streets once again in their tens of thousands. Several official websites in Bangladesh, including that of the central bank, the Prime Minister's office and also that of the Bangladeshi police, were hacked by a group that goes by the name The Resistance. The message that was left by the hackers on the website of the Prime Minister's office reads, "This is not a protest anymore, it is a war now." So why are the students in Bangladesh up in arms against the ruling dispensation or the quota system? Our next report gets more details.
University students across Bangladesh have been protesting for weeks for the country's conventional job quota system to be reformed. Under the allegedly biased system, 56% of much sought-after government jobs are reserved, including 30% for families of freedom fighters who fought in the country's liberation movement in 1971. The 30% quota system in place since 1972 was abolished by Sheikh Hasina in 2018 as a result of the student protests. The latest round of protests erupted after June 5th, when the High Court ordered the reinstatement of the 30% quota for families of freedom fighters. In a country where 40% of youth is neither in university nor working, the protesting students blamed the rampant unemployment on the quota system. Violence escalated at the start of the week after student protesters were attacked by activists of the Bangladesh Chhatra League, the student wing of Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina's Awami League party. As rival student groups attacked each other, 6 people were killed on Tuesday in clashes across the country. On Wednesday, the government ordered indefinite closure of all universities considered to be the epicenters of the movement against the quotas. But the defiant students refused to vacate campuses and blamed the security officials of premeditated murder.
6 students have been killed when they came to protest for a justified reason. It hurt us. We believe that anyone has the right to protest. The way police and law enforcing agencies are dealing with this, we think it is premeditated murder.
Hours after police forcibly dispersed the funeral ceremony to mourn the dead, Bangladeshi Prime Minister vowed to punish those responsible for killing 6 people in ongoing student protests.
I firmly declare that those who carried out murders, looting and violence, whoever they are, I will make sure they will be given appropriate punishment.
On Thursday, all hell broke loose as thousands of students clashed with armed police in Dhaka, who used tear gas and rubber bullets to disperse rallies. It was the deadliest day of the protests, with reportedly 32 people killed. In order to quell protests, authorities cut mobile and internet services. The South Asian country faced a complete nationwide internet blackout for hours. Angry protesters burned and vandalized buildings, including police and government offices. This included the Dhaka headquarters of state broadcaster Bangladesh Television. Additionally, the websites of major news organizations, including the Daily Star and the Dhaka Tribune, went offline. On Friday, the government banned public rallies in capital Dhaka, but students continued to take the streets. So far, Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has defended the quota system, arguing that veterans deserve the highest respect for their contributions in the war regardless of their political affiliation. She has instead accused the main opposition parties, the Bangladesh Nationalist Party and the right-wing Jamaat-e-Islami Party, of fueling chaos. The country's Supreme Court, which suspended the High Court's reinstatement of quotas, has set August 7th as the date when it will hear the government's challenge to the High Court ruling. The student protesters, though, are in no mood to relent and are demanding a legal amendment against the quota. Bearing the brunt of the police crackdown, they say they don't trust the government. As protests continue, the biggest challenge facing Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina is bridging this very trust deficit, which would be easier said than done.
In the context of the Israel-Gaza war, the airspace over Tel Aviv should be one of the most tightly guarded airspaces anywhere in the world. But as this conflict has repeatedly shown, the much-touted Iron Dome of the Israelis has often been found wanting when it comes to intercepting even crude drones and missiles launched by the Houthis. On the 19th of July, a drone launched by the Houthis struck Tel Aviv, resulting in the death of one individual, while 10 others sustained some injuries. On the legal front as well, the state of Israel has suffered a setback. The International Court of Justice has termed the Israeli occupation of the Palestinian territories to be illegal, and it has said that Israel should evacuate settlements and must pay reparations. The American Secretary of State Anthony Blinken again sounded an optimistic note, but claiming that a ceasefire deal for the Gaza Strip is close to the goal line. But the question, of course, is this. With Netanyahu's allies such as Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich openly threatening to bring down the Netanyahu government if Netanyahu were to agree to a ceasefire deal, is the Israeli Prime Minister in a position to agree to a ceasefire deal even if he wants to? Our next poll gets more details. This video footage will give you a glimpse of the scale of the explosion in Tel Aviv Central District caused by the Houthi drone. One person was killed, while at least 10 others sustained injuries. But what has baffled everyone is why a slow-moving drone was not intercepted by Israel's much-touted Iron Dome. This video shot by a Tel Aviv resident using a phone shows the slow-moving drone flying over the Tel Aviv skies just before the explosion. The sirens did not go off to warn the Israeli people of the approaching drone, nor did the Iron Dome's interceptor missiles engage the target. Israel blamed the lapse on a human error, claiming that another Houthi drone had been shot down outside of the Israeli territory. In the besieged Gaza Strip, where Israel has carried out a relentless campaign of bombing that has been compared to the bombing of Dresden by the Allied forces in the Second World War, the starving Palestinians have nowhere safe to go. Al-Mawasi was designated a safe zone by Israel, and when the Palestinians moved there, Israel bombed the tents of Al-Mawasi, claiming that Hamas's military chief Mohammed Saleh was hiding in one of the tents. Over 91 Palestinians were massacred and more than 300 others sustained grievous injuries in the Israeli attack. But it isn't just American-supplied bombs dropped by the Israelis that are killing the Palestinians. For over 9 months now, Gaza has remained under siege. Very little humanitarian aid has been allowed to trickle into the Gaza Strip, and starvation deaths have been reported from different parts of Gaza. This video from Beit Lahia highlights the scale of the hunger and deprivation of food that the Palestinians are being subjected to. In places where charity kitchens operate, the Palestinians can hope to get one meal a day. But in places where there are no charity kitchens, rations have run out, and the Palestinians are going hungry. Joe Biden, who's backed the Israeli war to the hilt in the last 9 months, again spoke of a need to end the war. But neither the United States nor Israel at this moment seem to have a clear plan about the day after the war ends.
I know Israel well, and I support Israel, but this war cabinet is one of the most conservative war cabinets in the history of Israel. And there's no ultimate answer other than a two-state solution here.
But the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, this week overwhelmingly passed a resolution opposing any Palestinian statehood. At this moment, a total of 145 nations recognize Palestine as a state, but Israel clearly does not. And the United States, with its current political setup, has so far never crossed Israel on the question of Palestine. And in the interim, the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, desperate and starving, keep moving from one place to another in search of safety. On the 13th of July, when 20-year-old Thomas Matthew Crooks aimed his gun and pulled the trigger on Donald Trump, he could not have sufficiently comprehended the magnitude of the crime that he was attempting to execute. The United States of America stood on the brink. This video of Trump reacting as the bullet grazed across his ear will forever be etched in American history. But Donald Trump is not the only former American president or a presidential frontrunner who came in the crosshairs of an assassin. For the United States of America has a history of presidential assassinations. From the time the United States gained independence in the year 1776, 4 sitting American presidents have been assassinated, while 3 others have managed to escape after sustaining injuries. The very first presidential assassination attempt happened in 1835, when the then President Andrew Jackson was shot at by a house painter by the name of Richard Lawrence. Lawrence used 2 pistols, but both of them misfired. But the would-be assassin Richard Lawrence was found not guilty due to insanity, but spent the rest of his life in insane asylums. In 1865, the 16th President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln, was shot dead by John Wilkes Booth. During his presidency, Lincoln had led the United States through the American Civil War. He had defeated the Confederacy, played a major role in the abolition of slavery in the United States, and had also modernized the American economy. Historians have often pondered over the what-if question if Lincoln had managed to survive the assassination attempt. Just 16 years after Lincoln's assassination, the United States was rocked by the killing of another sitting president. This time in 1881, President James Garfield was shot dead by Charles Julius Guiteau using a revolver. It was speculated that Charles Guiteau was frustrated at the repeated rejections by the Garfield administration of his desire to serve in Paris or Vienna. It would be just another 20 years before the United States would be rocked by another presidential assassination. In 1901, the 25th President of the United States, William McKinley, was assassinated by an anarchist called Leon Czolgosz. Leon Czolgosz was an American laborer. He was apprehended immediately after the assassination, tried for his crime, and then executed within 7 weeks. The 4th American president to be assassinated was John F. Kennedy in 1963. He was shot dead by Lee Harvey Oswald while he was traveling in a motorcade through Dallas. Conspiracy theorists have reveled in putting forth the motives behind the assassination of John F. Kennedy, although officially it was concluded that Lee Harvey Oswald had acted alone. Besides this, an assassination attempt was also made on the life of Theodore Roosevelt in 1912 when a wealthy businessman called John Schrank had shot at him. But Roosevelt managed to survive. In 1981, Ronald Reagan, the 40th President of the United States, was shot at by John Hinckley Jr. just 2 months after his inauguration, just as he was leaving a hotel in Washington, D.C. John Hinckley was found not guilty for the assassination attempt on the president, as his act was deemed to have been carried out in insanity. When Donald Trump was defeated in the presidential elections of 2020, it had sparked riots on the Capitol Hill, and it was just sheer luck through which Donald Trump managed to survive the assassination attempt that was carried out this month. The peaceful Sultanate of Oman was stunned by an attack on a Shiite mosque on the 15th of July. At least about 6 people were killed, including 4 Pakistanis and an Indian national, while 30 others were injured in the country's deadliest attack in recent memory. The dastardly attack was claimed by the Islamic State, a Sunni Muslim extremist group, whose 3 attackers were also killed in the rare security breach in the oil-rich Gulf nation. Though the Omani police is yet to identify a motive for the attack or to make any arrests, the timing on the eve of the holy day of Ashura is of significance. The Islamic State, in a pair of coordinated suicide bombings, had targeted Shiite-majority Iran in the month of January. But why did the Islamic State target Oman, a quiet nation that has regularly played the role of a mediator in regional conflicts? Our next report gets you the details.
Oman is a tranquil country on the southeastern edge of the Arabian Peninsula. Armed with well-trained security forces, it follows a policy of non-intervention. On the eve of the Shiite mourning day of Ashura, late on Monday evening, the Ali bin Abi Talib Mosque in the Wadi al-Kabir neighborhood of Oman's capital Muscat came under attack by 3 suicide attackers of Islamic State. The mosque at the time was packed with worshippers commemorating the 7th century battlefield martyrdom of Prophet Muhammad's grandson, Imam Hussein. Out of the 6 people killed, 4 were Pakistanis who reportedly died trying to save others. Pakistan's ambassador to Oman, Imran Ali, paid tribute to the Pakistani victims, applauded their bravery and described the shooting as a big example of terrorism. Reportedly, many of the worshippers inside the mosque were Pakistanis, who constitute a large number of the nearly 2 million migrants in Oman. This migrant workforce from Pakistan and elsewhere in South Asia is crucial in powering Oman's economy, as they fill low-income jobs in construction and various other fields. Pakistan's Foreign Ministry spokesperson strongly condemned the attack and underlined the persistent threat posed by terrorist organizations.
Pakistan condemns terrorism in all its forms and manifestations. This attack demonstrates the persistent threat of terrorism posed by terrorist organizations in the region.
Omani police later announced that all 3 assailants who were killed in the subsequent gunfight with security forces were Omani citizens, all brothers. Islamic State, the Sunni Muslim-dominated extremist group, considers Shiites to be heretics. On 3rd January this year, the extremist group, in a pair of coordinated suicide bombings, attacked a commemorative ceremony marking the killing of Qasim Soleimani at his grave in eastern Kerman. More than 80 people were killed in the deadliest terror attack in Shiite-majority Iran since 1978. This rare Oman attack, a case of sectarian violence, has shattered the perceived security of the Gulf Sultanate and underscored once again the continuing threat posed by the Islamic State.
Rio de Janeiro's state law enforcement agencies launched a mega operation across 10 favelas in western Rio on the 15th of July in a bid to regain control of areas plagued by narco gangs and other militias. In recent years, intense territorial disputes involving drug traffickers and militias have been witnessed in Rio's western zone. The massive operation was launched with an aim to end this war between the drug traffickers and these militias. Though the police raids are common in favelas, they've often been criticized for being largely ineffective. So the question, of course, is this: will this open-ended operation, which has no fixed end date, be successful when other similar such raids have failed in the past?
Rio de Janeiro is a seaside Brazilian city renowned for its beaches, but also notorious for its sprawling favelas. Favelas are low-income, working-class, densely populated neighborhoods found in urban areas throughout Brazil. The term favela, which means slum or ghetto, denotes communities that are poor, albeit pulsating with a vibrant culture. More often than not, these impoverished communities are besieged with high levels of insecurity owing to the presence of drug traffickers and paramilitary militias. Police operations in these neighborhoods have been frequent but largely ineffective. Often ending in gunfights, these operations have an outsized impact on the local population, while barely making a dent against gangs. In the latest operation on Monday, some 2,000 military and civil officers were deployed to 10 favelas in Rio de Janeiro to crack down on the conflict between narcos and militias.
We want to have a physical presence of the police and work with City Hall to dismantle front companies.
The governor Claudio Castro added that the Comando Vermelho drug trafficking cartel, considered the most powerful in the Rio region, had been trying to recover territories from the militias in the area. So far, police have made at least 3 arrests and seized a car with 3 grenades inside. The militias were first formed in the late 1980s, originally a band of former police officers, firefighters, and military men. Their cause was noble: to combat lawlessness in their poor neighborhoods, blighted by drug gangs. These neighborhood watch groups, though, soon metastasized into criminal outfits operating in multiple different rackets, including the internet service, cable TV, transportation, and construction. Increasingly, they have been involved in turf wars with drug gangs. Currently, militias control over half the territory in Rio's metro region and have become one of the region's biggest security threats. But the problem isn't limited to Rio alone.
It is very clear that this is not a problem limited to Rio de Janeiro. It is a problem in Brazil. It's not more some isolated criminal organizations here and there. They are actual mafias spread throughout the country. Rio de Janeiro, Sao Paulo, Ceará, Bahia, Rio Grande do Norte. We see it spread every day.
Unfortunately, bearing the brunt of these police operations are residents of these favelas, who are often caught in the crossfire between law enforcement agencies, narcos, and militias. More than 2 million people, inhabitants of these poor neighborhoods of Rio, are fervently hoping and praying for an end to this reign of terror.
And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of World at War. And if you want to reach out to me with any comments, feedback, or suggestions, please feel free to do so on the ID that you're seeing on your screens. I'm your host, Mohammed Saleh, and I'll see you again next week.